The alien market smelled like smoke, metal, and fear. It was late at night, but the place was full of noise. Slaves from different planets stood in cages. Some cried, some screamed. Some just looked down, too broken to speak. The auction stage was bright. Cold lights hung from the ceiling. Alien buyers in long robes stood and watched. They held credit chips in their hands, ready to buy a life. Then, a human walked in. His name was Mark Riker, a former soldier from Earth. He wore an old jacket and boots covered in dust. His face was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He didn't belong here, and everyone knew it. An alien merchant stepped in front of him. "Humans do not buy slaves here," the merchant hissed. Mark didn't answer. He looked past the merchant, toward the stage. A new slave was being pulled out by chains. Her skin was pale silver. Her body was thin, weak. Her arms and legs were covered in bruises. But her eyes, they were burning gold. The crowd laughed. One alien threw a piece of rotten fruit at her. It hit her shoulder. She didn't move. She just kept walking. She was forced to kneel on the platform. Her chains rattled loudly in the silence. The auctioneer shouted, "This one is a special breed. Strong genes, trained for silence and obedience. Starting price 10,000 credits." The crowd laughed again. Some aliens yawned. Others turned away. Then the slave lifted her head and stared directly at Mark. Her lips moved. No one else heard her, but Mark did. "Buy my chains, break them. Please," she whispered. Her voice was dry and soft. "I will give you strong children." Mark's heart jumped. He didn't know why, but something inside him said, "She's important." The auctioneer laughed again. "No buyers? All right, let's move. I'll buy her," Mark said. The room went silent. All eyes turned to the human. "You?" The auctioneer said, confused. "You want this one?" Mark stepped forward. "I'll pay 20,000 credits." Whispers spread across the room. Is he mad? Why this one? A human buying a slave? What is he planning? The auctioneer didn't care. Money was money. He smiled with sharp teeth. "Sold to the strange human." The chain was handed to Mark. The alien woman was pushed toward him. She nearly fell, but Mark caught her. She looked up at him. Her eyes were full of pain, but also something else, hope. "Why me?" Mark asked softly. She didn't answer. As they walked out of the market, the seller called after him, "You don't know what you've bought, human. She's cursed. She brings death." Mark didn't stop walking. Outside, the night was cold. 2 moons lit up the sky. He helped her into his old hover vehicle and sat beside her. They drove through the desert, heading toward his small shelter outside the city. For a long time she said nothing. Then she whispered, "Thank you." Mark glanced at her. "What's your name?" She paused, then said, "They called me Zira, but I had another name, long ago. I don't remember it anymore." Mark nodded slowly. "Well, Zira, you're safe now." Zira looked out the window. "No one is safe, not with me." Mark frowned. "What do you mean?" She touched her chains. "These are not normal chains. They are old, made by my enemies. These chains, they are alive." Mark blinked. "Alive?" "They can only be broken by someone with a pure heart," she said, her voice weak. "Someone not ruled by greed, hate, or power." Mark stayed quiet. He didn't know what to say. Then Zira turned to him and said something that sent chills down his spine. "They will come for me, Mark, and they will kill you. Unless you're ready." Asterisk. The door slammed shut behind them. Mark had never brought a stranger into his desert home before, especially not one in chains. But tonight felt different. He laid Zira gently on the floor cushion. Her body was cold, her skin pale. She hadn't eaten in days. He placed a warm cloth on her forehead. She didn't react, just stared at the ceiling, silent, like a ghost. Outside, the desert winds howled. Inside, something else whispered that it wasn't Zira. Mark stood still. The whisper was low, deep, almost inside his head. Break us. He looked at the chains on her wrists. They were glowing, faintly, a soft red light, pulsing like a heartbeat. Mark stepped back. Zira opened her eyes. They're awake now, she said softly. What are they? Mark asked. What kind of chains glow like that? Zira tried to sit up. They were made in the old times by the high lords of Vakar, to trap things that should never walk. Free, things like you. She looked at him with tired eyes. Things like my father. Mark's chest tightened. Your father? Zira nodded. He was once a warlord. They feared his blood. They feared what his children would become. So they captured me as a child, locked me in chains, sold me. Again and again, her voice broke. I stopped counting the masters. Mark walked over and sat near her. Why did you ask me to buy you? Zira closed her eyes. Because when I saw you, I didn't feel fear. There was a silence. Only. The wind screamed outside. Suddenly, Zira's body shook. She clutched her chest. The chains around her wrists began to tighten, digging into her skin. She cried out. Mark rushed forward. What's happening? They're testing you, she gasped. The chains. They don't want you near me. The red glow turned bright, then vanished. Zira passed out. Mark stared at the chains, now calm. Again, he touched one lightly, and for a split second, he saw something, a flash of a battlefield, fire raining from the sky, a tall alien king holding a burning sword, and a little girl screaming. He pulled his hand back, heart pounding. What did I just see? Zira moaned and woke again. They showed you, didn't they? She whispered. A memory. Mark nodded slowly. That was your past? Part of it. The chains keep my memories locked. Only those who try to free me can see. Mark sat down beside her. Then I'll try. I'll break them. Zira shook her head. No. Not yet. You're not ready. They'll destroy you if you try too soon. Just then, the lights in the room flickered. Mark grabbed his weapon and stood up. Footsteps outside. Zira's. Eyes went wide. They found me. Mark moved to the door quietly. Through the tiny window, he saw a shadow. Then another. 3 alien figures in dark cloaks stood near his vehicle. Their faces were hidden. They weren't from the market. These ones were hunters. Zira's voice was sharp. They work for the High Lords. They don't care about rules. They came to take me back, or kill me. Mark whispered, not tonight. He reached for his old armor, dusty but still strong. As he suited up, he looked at Zira. Can you move? She nodded slowly and stood, weak but ready. Mark loaded his weapon. Then stay behind me. If they want you, they'll have to go through me first. Zira sat in silence, staring at the fire. Mark had saved her again. 3 hunters had come in the night. They didn't speak. They didn't ask questions. They attacked like shadows. But Mark was faster, smarter, and more dangerous than they expected. Now the bodies were burning outside, and the flames crackled quietly. Zira's golden eyes reflected the firelight. Her face was calm, but her hands were shaking. I remember now, she whispered. Mark looked up. Remember what? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she slowly reached behind her neck and pulled something out from under her collar. Tiny metal shard on a chain. It glowed the same red as her bindings. This was part of my father's crown, she said softly. Mark leaned forward, surprised. You told me he was a warlord. No, she said. I lied. She looked at him now, truly looked. No fear, no mask. He wasn't a warlord. He was a god to some, a monster to others. His name was Vakar, I the Boundless. Mark froze. That name was legend across the stars. A being so powerful that entire planets surrendered when he entered orbit. But he vanished long ago. Some said he was destroyed. Others said he became a myth. Zira closed her hand around the shard. They feared his bloodline would rise again. that his children would inherit his power, so when I was born, they took me. They kept you as a slave? Mark asked. She nodded. To keep me weak. To stop my body from remembering who I... Mark frowned. But you're remembering now. Zero looked at the burning hunters. Yes, every time someone tries to hurt me, a piece of me wakes up. She stood slowly and walked to the edge of the shelter. The wind blew through her silver hair. I once dreamed of oceans, she said, of flying cities, of my father's voice calling me from the stars. Mark joined her. Do you think he's still alive? Zira shook her head. No, but his enemies are, and they know I'm waking up. That's why they sent the hunters. Mark asked, then why do the chains still work on you, if you're that powerful? Zira lifted her arm. Because I'm not complete yet. These chains aren't just metal. They're forged from ancient energy, bound with oaths and blood. I can't break them, but someone else can. Someone with a pure heart, Mark said, remembering her. Words, yes, someone who doesn't want to control me. Just free me. There was silence. Then Mark said, so what happens if the chains are broken? Zira turned to him, her voice suddenly full of sadness and warning. If the chains break, before I'm ready, I might become something worse than my father. If they never break, I'll fade away. My body will rot and my power will be stolen piece by piece. She looked at him, eyes glowing brighter now. You have a choice, Mark. Run now and live. Or stay and help me become what I was born to be. Mark stared at her. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She simply asked, and that was more powerful than anything. I'm not running, he said at last, but we need answers, real ones. Not stories or half-truths, Zira nodded. Then we go to the archive. It's deep underground, far from any city. My father hid something there, my full memory, sealed in crystal. Mark grabbed his gear. Then that's where we go next. As they left the burning shelter behind, Zira whispered one last thing under her breath, soft almost like a prayer. Please, let me still be me. When I remember everything. Zira opened her eyes, and the world was burning. But it wasn't real. She was dreaming. In the dream, her body floated over a battlefield. Towers were falling. Giant machines crushed the ground. Soldiers ran and screamed. In the center stood a glowing figure, her father, Vakri. He looked at her. His voice shook the sky. They will hunt you, daughter. They will never stop. She woke with a gasp. Mark was already packing supplies. His weapon was loaded. His face looked calm, but his eyes were sharp like they always were before danger. We have to move, he said. Now, Zira sat up. How close are they? Mark handed her a water flask. Too close. The sky outside was dark with storm clouds. But this wasn't weather. It was a hunter ship. Black and silent, hovering just above the ground. No warning, no lights. Just death. Zira stood and grabbed the cloth to cover her chains. They've sent the bound seekers. Mark paused. That's bad? They don't bring prisoners, Zira said. Only bodies. They rushed out the back into the dust and rock. Mark led the way through narrow cliffs and old ruins. The ground shook behind them as the hunter ship landed. From the ship came 3 figures tall, armored and fast. Not machines, not aliens. Something in between. Mark and Zira ran through tunnels, across broken bridges, over dry rivers. Every sound echoed. Every footstep behind them felt closer. They didn't speak until one whisper broke the air. Zira. She froze. That voice. It was inside her head. Mark turned. What is it? I heard. She looked around. I think one of them is calling me, not out loud, in my mind. Mark didn't like that. Can they control you? No, she said, but her voice shook. But they might be connected to the chains. Suddenly, a beam of red light shot past them. hitting the rock wall and exploding it. "Run!" Mark shouted. They ducked into a collapsed temple half buried under the sand. Inside it was dark, but safe. For now, Zira leaned against a stone pillar, breathing hard. Her hands were glowing faintly again. Mark lit a small lamp. "We need to fight back soon." Zira shook her head. "If I fight now, the chains will feed on it. They'll grow tighter." "They want violence." Mark looked at her. "Then what do they want you to become?" Zira looked down. "A weapon. Just like my father." Silence again. Then Mark stepped forward. "You're not your father. You're not a weapon. You're more than that." Zira blinked. "Why do you believe that?" Mark looked at her, serious. "Because a weapon wouldn't cry in her sleep." Zira turned away, hiding her face. Outside, a low howl echoed through the canyon. The bound seekers were close. Zira stood tall. Her fear faded. "If I can't use my power, then I'll use my memory." She walked to the far end of the temple and touched the wall. Symbols lit up. "This place was built by my bloodline," she said. "There are traps, doors, secrets here." Mark raised an eyebrow. "You remember this?" "Not all of it," she replied, "but enough to survive." She pressed a stone and part of the floor opened, revealing a hidden path. Mark smiled. "You really are full of surprises." She didn't smile back. "This isn't about surprise. It's about staying alive." As they dropped into the hidden passage, Zira whispered to herself, "Keep chasing me if you want. But I'm not the broken girl you sold anymore." Mark couldn't sleep. Not because of the silence, but because of the whisper. It started faint, like wind through the rocks. But it wasn't wind. It was a voice, not Zira's, not his own. It came from the chains. He sat up in the darkness. Zira was asleep across the stone room, her face soft in the moonlight. Her silver hair glowed faintly. The red chains on her wrists and ankles didn't move, but they pulsed, like veins carrying fire. Mark stood and stepped closer. He didn't touch them, but the voice grew louder. "Touch us. You are worthy." He clenched his jaw. "No," he whispered. "I'm not here to use her. I'm here to help her." The voice laughed, cold and ancient. "Help? You seek to control. Like all others, break us, and she becomes yours." Mark's hand trembled. His mind felt heavy. His vision blurred. Suddenly, he wasn't in the room anymore. He stood in a black space. Alone. In front of him floated Zira, chained, crying, screaming. Behind her was another version of himself, eyes glowing, face twisted in greed. That Mark reached out and touched the chains. They shattered. Zira fell, screaming. Her body turned into light, then into fire. The real Mark stepped back, horrified. "No," he whispered. "I don't want that." The voice echoed in his skull. "Then you are weak." He gasped and woke. Sweat poured down his back. His heart raced. Zira was awake now, too. She looked at him carefully. "You heard them," she said. Mark nodded slowly. "They showed me things. Dark things." She looked away. "That's what they do. That's why no one has ever broken them." "Not the right way." "What's the right way?" Zira hesitated. Then said, "To break them, you have to love the person you free. Not own. Not protect. Love. Truly. Deeply. Even if it means letting them go." Mark stared at her. "I don't even know you that well," he admitted. Zira nodded. "That's the problem." He walked to the edge of the ruin, looking at the stars. "They tempted me. Promised power. Promised you." Zira stood beside him. "They want to be used, but if someone uses them, I disappear. I become what they want, not who I am." There was a long silence. Then she said, "That's why I chose you." Mark blinked. "You chose me?" "I saw you in the crowd," she said quietly. "You didn't look at me like I was a thing. You looked at me like I was a person, even before I spoke." Mark was quiet. Then he smiled slightly. "You're a strange woman." Zira smiled back, tired but real. And you're a strange man for buying a cursed slave with glowing chains and daddy issues. They both laughed. The first laugh since this journey began, but the moment didn't last. A deep boom echoed through the stone tunnels. Mark turned. Serious? They're still hunting us, Zira nodded. Yes, and now they know the chains are cracking. They'll be desperate. Mark gripped his weapon. Let them come. Zira placed a hand on his arm. You'll need more than bullets. Soon, you'll need to trust me. Even if I start to change. He looked into her eyes. Then tell me this. If I set you free, who will you become? Zira didn't answer right away. Then she said quietly, someone strong enough to protect. And gentle enough to choose. Peace. He nodded. And for the first time he believed her. The planet had no name, not anymore. The stars above it were cold and silent. And the ground below was made of black stone that hummed like a distant heartbeat. No life. No wind. No sound. Only the entrance to the trial chamber, a door older than history, shaped like a screaming face carved into a mountain. Mark stood before it. Zira was behind him. Her eyes filled with worry. You don't have to do this, she said softly. Yes, I do, Mark replied. The trial is not a fight, she warned. It's a mirror. It shows you who you really are. Mark nodded. That's what scares me. He stepped forward, and the stone mouth opened with a groan. A gust of hot, dry air rushed out like a giant exhale from the mountain itself. Zira reached out and grabbed his hand. Mark, whatever happens in there, remember who you are, not who they want you to be. He gave her one last look and walked into the darkness. The door slammed shut behind him. Total silence. Then, light, soft red glow lit the ancient walls, covered in symbols and strange runes. The chains on Zira's wrists were carved here, every link, every curse, every law. At the center of the chamber stood a stone platform with a single object, a mirror. But it didn't show his reflection. It showed his past. Mark saw himself as a child watching his home burn, soldiers shouting, his mother pulling him to safety, then his first kill, a war. Blood on his hands. He closed his eyes, but the mirror forced them open. Next it showed Zira, chained, begging, crying, 1,000 times. In 1,000 places, and behind her, it showed him walking away. I didn't walk away, Mark whispered. The mirror spoke. But you wanted to. Mark fell to his knees. I'm not perfect. I was afraid, but I stayed. I chose her. The chamber trembled. Chains grew from the walls, slithering toward him. Do you choose her now, even if it means you suffer? Yes, Mark said. Do you choose her now, even if she becomes stronger than you? Yes. Do you choose her now, even if she never belongs to you? Mark looked up, heart steady. Yes. The chains stopped, then the platform cracked. A crystal rose from its center, floating, glowing bright gold. Inside it was a tiny spark. A memory. A piece of Zira's soul. Locked long ago. Mark stepped forward and touched it. Pain shot through him. Memories. Not his Zira's birth. Her childhood in shadows. Her first chain. Her last scream. Tears filled Mark's eyes. He held the crystal tight and it melted into his hand. Then silence and light. The chamber opened. The mountain screamed. And the chains that bound Zira wherever she was began to break. Outside, Zira gasped. The red metal on her wrists turned gold, then cracked, then vanished into dust. She stood alone at the mountain's edge, shaking. Then the ground split open, and Mark rose from the stone. Glowing. He collapsed in front of her, barely breathing. Zira knelt beside him, holding his face. You did it. You really did it. Mark opened his eyes weakly. Yeah. But I think I left part of myself in there. Zira kissed his forehead. Her chains now gone. You gave me back my soul, she whispered. Now let me return the favor. The sky tore open. Zira stood on the black cliff, her silver hair flying wildly as wind and lightning danced above her. The chains were gone. Her body glowed not with fire, but with something purer. Something ancient. Mark lay behind her, breathing, but weak. His clothes were torn, and his skin was burned from the trial. He had given everything. And now she was free. Ships appeared in the clouds, dark, sharp, silent. The High Lords had come. Hundreds of them. To reclaim their slave. To stop a daughter of Vakri from rising, but it was too late. Zira didn't run. She stepped forward and raised her hand. The air bent around her. Energy lit the sky. The earth answered her voice. Come then, she said quietly, and see what your chains created. The first attack came, fast beams of light, fire from the sky. Zira's eyes turned white. She caught the fire and crushed it in her hand. Mark opened his eyes, just in time to see her rise into the air, floating like a star in the storm. Her voice echoed across the mountains. I am not your weapon. She threw back the energy, and a warship exploded in the clouds. I am not your slave. 2 more ships fell, burning. I am the daughter of a fallen god, and I choose peace. Then silence. The enemy ships stopped. The High Lords watched from afar. They had power, but she had become something else. Something greater. And she wasn't alone. Mark stood now, barely able to walk. But he walked to her side. Zira looked at him with gentle eyes. I promised you strong children, she whispered, but what I really meant was a strong future. Mark smiled, tired but proud. Both sound good to me. Zira turned back to the sky. Her hands opened. I will not destroy you, she said to the clouds. I will not become what you feared. I will become what I choose. A final wave of light rippled from her body, not as a weapon, but as a message. Hope. The enemy ships pulled back, one by one. They disappeared. Zira landed beside Mark. The storm faded, and for the first time in years, the stars above that world shined without fear. She looked at Mark, reached for his hand, and said softly, Let's go home.